How fast can you make tags? Hi, I'm Ardith, and today I'm sharing 12 Christmas gift tags in less than 12 minutes. This video shows only the highlights of making each tag, and there are more details on my individual daily blog posts. These tags were all made for Ellen Hutson's annual 12 Tags of Christmas event, and they mainly use Essentials by Ellen products. Each day's tag was inspired by a Christmas song, and each design could be expanded easily to work on a card. For most of these tags, I used this rectangle tag die as the base. It comes from the new Tag Trio set, and it's a really good size. There's plenty of room for some interesting design work on the front, and a sentiment or writing on the back. Okay, let's get started. Day 1's inspiration song was Silver Bells. I used Lawn Fawn holographic paper, and you're going to see a lot of that in this video. And I embossed the tag with a Crafter's Companion embossing folder and my Gemini Junior. That gave my tag a really neat dimensional background that reflects the holographic paper really well. For the bells, I used a Jingle All the Way sentiment from last year's Retro Holiday Greetings set, heat embossed onto the holographic cardstock. I used my embossing buddy before I stamped it, and I had no trouble with excess powder sticking to that slick surface. If you're curious about my foil-lined shoebox lid where I heat up my embossed panels, I'm linking below to my cheap craft room hacks video where I go into more details. Day 2's song was The Little Drummer Boy. I have a full video on the Ellen Hutson channel showing all the details of how I made this. I used the new Gingerbread Plushie boy set, as well as a drum from the 12 Days set, along with the Tall and Skinny Alpha, which is one of my top 10 new crafty purchases from 2020, and that's another video I'll link below for you. Day 3's song was Here Comes Santa Claus, and Ellen released the cutest new Santa this year in the Santa's List set. I stamped him along with a new Happy Holiday sentiment from Love and Light onto a tag that I had spritzed with brushed pewter mica spray. I colored Santa with some red Copic markers and minimal shading. Santa's got his hands stretched out, and I filled them with holographic snowballs using a die from last year's Snowbud set. I positioned it so that the middle snowball became the hole in the tag for the twine. Day 4's song was Sleigh Ride. I started with a Desert Storm tag, and I used some simple stamping and masking to create a scene with the sled and sack of presents and the reindeer from Santa's List. By masking, I can make it look like the images I stamp first are in front of the ones I stamp after the mask is in place. I stamped the forest from Little Squatch, and then I removed the masks. I colored everything in with muted colors of Copic markers. I paper pieced a white sack over top, and then I added some twinkle stickles over everything for some iridescent sparkle. Day 5 was White Christmas, and this tag was created with the mini snowflake frame layer set from Birch Press Design. I cut the 3 layers and glued them together, leaving the solid white pieces around the snowflake in on the bottom layer. I added some all-over sparkle by spritzing it with Avery Hell Clear Shimmer Spray. Then I added liquid glue all around the frame, and I sprinkled some Ranger mica flakes over top. These flakes are iridescent and give a really frosty look. To make sure I was able to shake off all the excess, I turned the tag upside down and pressed it down into the paper so that all the little flakes could really get stuck into the glue. I added a sentiment from Santa's List stamped with Twilight ink. Day 6's song was Home for Christmas. I started with a white tag that I spritzed with Distress Resist spray. This gives a little texture to the tag, and it also resists as I blend 2 colors of blue Catherine Pooler ink over top to create a night sky. This gives the look of tiny stars in the distance. I cut 3 shaker globe frames, and then I cut my landscape from one of the inner circles so that it'll all fit right back in perfectly. For my cozy home, I used some slate cardstock and a gingham stamp from the Plaid Maker set. I used a house die from Home and Hearth, and I lined it up so the plaid pattern will be symmetrical on the house. To add a snowy roof, I cut another house, trimmed off the chimney, and glued it just slightly higher than the gray house. I added some holographic stars, also from the Home and Hearth set, as well as some more Tall and Skinny letters for my sentiment. Day 7's song was Marshmallow World. I don't know this song very well, so I focused on the idea of treats, and I started by creating some gingerbread cardstock by pressing my over coffee and mandarin spice ink onto a scrap of white cardstock. Then I stamped an appropriate sentiment from the new Warmest Wishes set directly onto my tag, as well as the little scalloped background from Ginger House. I did a little Copic coloring with 3 shades of red, then green, yellow, blue, and pink, and a bit of gray on the ones I left white. Using 3 shades of each color gave the look of lots of dimension. I stamped the little gingerbread people from Ginger House with WOW embossing ink, and I sprinkled white embossing powder over top to look like icing. I cut them out with their matching dies and I popped them up on the tag. The song for day 8 was We Wish You a Merry Christmas. I put a Desert Storm tag into my MISTI and I lined up the Merry Christmas sentiment from last year's 'Tis the Season, and then I stamped it repeatedly with Cranberry Fizz ink. I moved the tag up a ½ inch each time to ensure equal spacing, and I moved it from left to right for variety. These magnets are another one of my cheap craft room hacks, and I used one to hold the tag in place as I moved it around in my MISTI. To add a bit of glam, I swinked some Altenew Enchanted Gold pigment ink over top. And in case you don't know what swinking is, I've linked my video below where I show 16 different ways to use this easy technique. Finally, I popped up some sweet little snowmen from Made This For You to finish off this simple but very sweet tag. Day 9's song was Holly Jolly Christmas. I started by stamping and coloring, then die cutting 8 sprigs of holly from holiday characters. I stamped a sentiment from Retro Holiday Greetings that says Happy Holidays, perfect for this song. And then I trimmed it down with an Essential Circles die, which I store in a binder ring, which is yet another one of my cheap craft room hacks. Next, I did something that may surprise you. I ink blended my tag background with Concord and 9th ink in Aqua Sky. You know I love my Catherine Pooler inks, but this shade is missing from her rainbow. And when Concord and 9th released foam pads, I knew they would be high quality and have similar qualities to my beloved CP inks. And isn't this color just gorgeous? To assemble the tag, I popped up the circular sentiment as well as the 8 holly sprigs around it to form a wreath. Then I added some Nouveau Crystal Glaze to the berries and sprinkled some chunky glitter from Studio Katya over top for sparkle. Day 10's song was Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. Maybe I just can't take a joke, but this is not my favorite song. I chose to focus on As for Me and Grandpa, We Believe, and I tried to make some magic. I started with more of the holographic cardstock and 3 colors of alcohol ink. I put down some rubbing alcohol and then some of each color, and I used my lens cleaner puffer thing to move the ink around until it dried. I cut a tag from that, and so far so good. Then I got out my Gemini foil press and I heated it up. I put some gold shimmer foil in between the tag and the die face up, and I let everything heat up. I used the medium temperature and 30 seconds to try and make sure it would foil nicely. I didn't want to have to start over. And here's the result. I think a darker foil would have provided more contrast and been easier to read, but I'm really happy with how this turned out. On day 11, it was time to deck the halls. I started by stamping Mondo Holly onto a 5.5 by 8.5 piece of white cardstock. I left the stamp on the door of the MISTI, and then I trimmed down the cardstock with the tag die and colored it in with Copic markers. I chose a pale aqua for the background, and then I added dots of colorless blender to create some subtle texture. Then I fit the tag back into the piece of cardstock and stamped the holly again, this time with VersaFine Onyx ink. Then I embossed the outline with sparkling embossing powder. To finish it off, I cut Fa La La with the Tall and Skinny Alpha from white cardstock, and I glued the letters on using the magnetic ruler of my mini Make Art station to keep them straight. And then I added some Stardust stickles to the letters for sparkle. Day 12 is, well, rather appropriately, the 12 Days of Christmas. I had to think about this one a bit. I knew I couldn't fit all 12 days of gifts onto a tag, so I focused on My True Love Gave to Me. I started with 2 panels I created during Day 2's video with strips of colored cardstock. From one, I cut a tag, and from the other, I cut one of the faux hearts. I spritzed them both with shimmer spray for some sparkle. Then I simply stamped and die cut the gifts from the Bearware 5 set, popped up the heart, popped up the gifts, and that's my final tag done. I hope you enjoyed this quick look at my 12 tags of Christmas. I used a ton of supplies, so I've listed just the main ones in the description below. But each blog post has more detailed information and product links if you're interested. And I'm linking here to last year's video for even more tag inspiration. My 3 favorites for this year are Day 1, Silver Bells, Day 2, Drummer Boy, and Day 5, White Christmas. Leave me a comment and let me know what your top 3 are. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time!